Good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's the 24th of September 2025. We're still in 2025, but not for much longer, given we're nearly through September by the gods. And it's the second day of Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year. So 2 holy days that you're not supposed to do any work and, be very spiritual and introverted. But I've had, I didn't do any bindi weeding today because I'm tired of leaning on my very sore wrist. The pain was radiating up my arm. So I'll give it a rest today. A good reason to have a rest. A Shabbat type reason, but that's not the reason that stopped me from working. It was the pain. But anyway, I'm having a lovely day. My veggie box arrived, fruit and veg box that I ordered from Farmer's Pick, and I'm very happy with the selection I got. I'm going to continue with that. Good selection. There was even little tiny eggplants and pumpkin and bok choy, and what else was in there? Big head of broccoli, which I love. Apples. Trying to think what else. Mandarins, couple of oranges. Don't eat a lot of citrus, but it won't kill me. And what else was in there? I'm trying to think. Sweet potato, which I also love, and a couple of passion fruits. So there was a really good selection. I'm even considering upgrading to getting a bigger box because it's got to last 2 weeks, but I think that might be enough for me to go on. There weren't any potatoes, but I can buy that anywhere. So yeah, I mean there was sweet potato, but not ordinary potatoes. But anyway, I'm very happy with it, very, very happy, and excited, and yes, so what else can I tell you? That's about it. I'm out here, as you can see, with my birdie boys sitting behind me, so you can keep an eye on them while I read to you the Silmarillion, and it's a bit of something to look at when I'm droning on in my dulcet tones. So anyway, little Beau's a bit confused as to why I'm sitting in front of him, because I normally sit over under the frangipani tree, but I'm trying to stay a bit in the shade, and it's all happening in a far out way at Sacred Space. So everything's lovely, and we're having some really lovely days. After that dreadful illness I had that dragged on far too long, I feel quite cheerful and glad to be alive and glad to be feeling better, and life's pretty bloody good actually when you think about it in the broad scheme of things. I mean, there's lots of things that yesterday I had a very anxious day and was stressing about all sorts of things that are actually beyond my control anyway. So anyway, I dealt with it by digging up, I called it murdering all the bindis, which are very pretty little prickles, but they have to go. But I've nearly done the backyard. There's only the side garden and the front to go, and maybe a bit on the verge, but I don't think I'll bother with that. It's overwhelming and too much, and I'm so tired. I slept 11 hours and 11 minutes last night, which is an angel number sequence. So there you go. It was a bit odd. I actually woke up about an hour beforehand, but I was just so tired I thought I'll just stay in bed and I'll just snooze a bit longer because I'm just utterly exhausted. But yes, a good rest and a good breathing result means I can carry on as per normal, strutting my stuff. People are there. Just on a slight incline, I feel crooked. There we go. What you doing, little boy? You talking to the birdies? What's Kermie doing? What is Kermie doing? It's the trouble with sitting with my back to him if I can't see. Oh, he's eating. Right, let us continue with it's a short chapter, so I'll probably do a couple of chapters today, depending on how weary I get and how much my brain starts drifting off. So let us continue with chapter 14 of Beleriand and its realms. This is the fashion of the lands into which the Noldor came, in the north of the western regions of Middle-earth in the ancient days. And here also is told of the manner in which the chieftains of the Eldar held their lands, and the leaguer upon Morgoth after the Dagor Aglareb, the third battle in the walls of Beleriand. In the north of the world, Melkor had in the ages past reared Ered Engren, the Iron Mountains, as a fence to his citadel of Utumno, and they stood upon the borders of the regions of everlasting cold, in a great curve from east to west. Behind the walls of Ered Engren in the west, where they bent back northwards, Melkor built another fortress as a defence against assault that might come from Valinor. And when he came back to Middle-earth, as has been told, he took up his abode in the endless dungeons of Angband, the hells of iron, for in the war of the powers, the Valar, in their haste to overthrow him in his great stronghold of Utumno, did not wholly destroy Angband, nor search out all its deep places. Beneath Ered Engren he made a great tunnel which issued south of the mountains, and there he made a mighty gate. But above this gate, and behind it, even to the mountains, he piled the thunderous towers of Thangorodrim, that were made of the ash and slag of his subterranean furnaces, and the vast refuse of his tunnelings. They were black and desolate and exceedingly lofty, and smoke issued from their tops, dark and foul upon the northern sky. Before the gates of Angband, filth and desolation spread southward for many miles over the wide plain of Ardgalen, but after the coming of the sun, rich grass arose there, and while Angband was besieged and its gates shut, there were green things even among the pits and broken rocks before the doors of hell. To the west of Thangorodrim lay Hisylome, the land of mist, for so it was named by the Noldor in their own tongue, because of the clouds that Morgoth sent thither during their first encampment. Hithlum it became in the tongue of the Sundar that dwelt in those regions. It was a fair land while the siege of Angband lasted, although its air was cool and winter there was cold. In the west it was bounded by Ered Lormi, the echoing mountains that marched near the sea, and in the east and south by the great curve of Ered Wethrin, the shadowy mountains that looked across Ardgalen and the Vale of Sirion. Fingolfin and Fingon his son held Hithlum, and the most part of Fingolfin's folk dwelt in Mithrin, about the shores of the great lake. To Fingon was assigned Dor Lurman, that lay in the west of the mountains of Mithrin. But their chief fortress was at Ithel, Sirion, in the east of Ered Wethrin, whence they kept watch upon Ardgalen, and their cavalry rode upon that plain even to the shadow of Thangorodrim, for from few their horses had increased swiftly, and the grass of Ardgalen was rich and green. Of those horses many of the sires came from Valinor, and they were given to Fingolfin by Maedhros in atonement of his losses, for they had been carried by ship to Losgar. West of Dorlurman, beyond the echoing mountains, which south of the firth of Drengist marched inland, lay Nevrast, that signifies the hither shore in the Sindarin tongue. That name was given at first to all the coastlands south of the firth, but afterwards only to the land whose shores lay between Drengist and Mount Taras. There for many years was the realm of Turgon the Wise, son of Fingolfin, bounded by the sea, and by Ered Lurman, and by the hills, which continued the walls of Ered Wethrin westward from Ivrin to Mount Taras, which stood upon a promontory. By some Nevrast was held to belong rather to Beleriand than to Hithlum, for it was a milder land, watered by the wet winds from the sea, and sheltered from the cold north winds that blew over Hithlum. It was a hollow land, surrounded by mountains and great coast cliffs, higher than the plains behind, and no river flowed thence. And there was a great mere in the midst of Nevrast, with no certain shores, being encircled by wide marshes. Lenaiwen was the name of that mere, because of the multitude of birds that dwelt there, of such as love tall reeds and shallow pools. In the coming of the Noldor, many of the grey elves lived in Nevrast near to the coasts, and especially about Mount Taras in the southwest. For to that place Ulmo and Ossi had been wont to come in days of old. All that people took Turgon for their lord, and the mingling of the Noldor and the Sundar came to pass soonest there, and Turgon dwelt long in those halls that he named Vinyamar, under Mount Taras, beside the sea. South of Ardgalen, the great highland named Dorthonion, stretched for 60 leagues from west to east. Great pine forests it bore, especially on its northern and western sides. By gentle slopes from the plain it rose to a bleak and lofty land, where lay many towns at the feet of pale Tors, whose heads were higher than the peaks of Eredwethrin. But southward, where it looked towards Doriath, it fell suddenly in dreadful precipices. From the northern slopes of Dorthonion, Angrod and Aignor, both of Finarfin, looked out over the fields of Ardgalen and were the vassals of their brother Finrod, lord of Nargothrond. Their people were few, for the land was barren, and the great highlands behind were deemed to be a bulwark that Morgoth could not lightly seek to cross. Between Dorthonion and the shadowy mountains there was a narrow vale, whose sheer walls were clad with pines, but the vale itself was green, for the river Sirion flowed through it, hastening towards Beleriand. Finrod held the pass of Sirion, and upon the isle of Tol Sirion, in the midst of the river, he built a mighty watch-tower, Minas Tirith. But after Nargothrond was made, he committed that fortress mostly to the keeping of Orodreth, his brother. Now the great and fair country of Beleriand lay on either side of the mighty river Sirion, renowned in song, which rose at Eithel Sirion and skirted the edge of Ardgalen ere he plunged through the pass, becoming ever fuller with the streams of the mountains. Thence he flowed south for 130 leagues, gathering the waters of many tributaries, until, with a mighty flood, he reached his many mouths and sandy delta at the Bay of Balar. And following Sirion from north to south, there lay upon the right hand in West Beleriand the forest of Brethiel between Sirion and Teiglen, and then the realm of Nargothrond between Teiglen and Narog. Or is it Teigla? I have to look up the pronunciations again. I get so muddled. I forget. It's not like me to get muddled and forget. I can't even remember what page the pronunciations were on. EI as in Teiglen has the sound of English grey. So I was correct. AE is pronounced I. I, and OE, oi. Right, just needed that reminder. Just had a moment of academic panic. Academic panic, we shall call it. It's all stuff and nonsense. It's not even my language. Why do I need to be perfect at everything? It's okay to fail, Tanyula. You've been failing all your life, and failure is after all your style. Fuck that shit. But anyway, it's not so bad when you fail at Elvish, but when you fail at love, it's a double jeopardy and a tragedy beyond worlds, people of Earth. Never mind. The man that's meant to be mine will love me, even though I mispronounced Elvish. So clearly he won't be an elf, will he? Anyway, he might be patient with me, teach me to speak it properly. I remember one time my friend Jared, many moons ago, he was inventing his own language. It was quite delightful. The man is a genius, actually. And he was teaching me his new language. And it was actually very fun and light-hearted, and took my minds off my horrific, ugly, putrescent divorce. It was emotional and indeed physical strangulation, torture, that divorce. So thank God for men like Jared, who knew how to brighten my day and take my mind off my abject fucking lived horror at the time. Anyway, where were we? Mispronouncing Taguin, which I actually pronounced correctly and then doubted myself. You see, self-doubt is a thing, people of Earth. And the river Narog rose in the falls of Evreen, in the southern face of Dor Lerman, and flowed some 80 leagues ere he joined Sirian in Nan Tathrin, the land of willows. I love that he's given a gender to the river, because rivers are indeed living, possibly sentient beings, for all we know. Just because we can't communicate with its personal brand of magic doesn't mean it's not sentient. I think in New Zealand, in Aotearoa, the Maori people have declared rivers as sentient beings. So you see, it's in there, the knowledge, the deep indigenous knowledge. It's even still locked away inside me. Comes out occasionally in strange ways. Right, I'm just trying to find what I haven't listed it. Right. Right, my darlings, let's continue. I got a little bit lost there, trying to work out what O with a thing is pronounced. Just says exaggerate the vowel, I think. Didn't have that particular one, but we're there, people of Earth. We're there. Before long, I'll be part Elvish, and the pixies will probably abduct me, take me to the eternal summerlands, where I can dance and play every day, never have to worry about money ever again, because fairy gold. And I'll live happily ever after. Be careful what you wish for, people of Earth. Stay human as long as you can. Just saying. I'm sure it would be quite lovely to be actual fairy, but you know, I wasn't born into the fairy realm, and you just have to know before whom you stand and know whom you are. Know thyself, people of Earth. A hobbity woman in a flesh suit reading in the sacred space garden on this beautiful Rosh Hashanah day, living my best life. And I don't need fairy eternal summerlands when I have them here in baking, desiccating, schwitzing hot Brisbane, Australia. Although it hasn't been too hot the last few days, it's been quite lovely. Right, but don't worry, the heat is coming. You'll hear me complain about that vigorously. Just like I complained when it got too cold. So there is that. One must be forever grateful. Every season has its reason, and we should just ride through it gloriously and sweetly. But winter got ruined because I got very, very ill for nearly 8 weeks. But yes, that sort of marred winter a bit for me. Anyway, not just for me personally, but lots of people got very, very sick. Wasn't pleasant, that. But where were we? I'll read that again. And the river Narog rose in the falls of Everine in the southern face of Dol Lormen, and flowed some 80 leagues ere he joined Sirion in Nan Tathran, the land of willows. Sounds pretty. South of Nan Tathran was a region of meads filled with many flowers, where few folk dwelt, and beyond lay the marshes and isles of reed about the mouths of Sirion, and the sands of his delta empty of all living things, save birds of the sea. I feel like I'm being surrounded by the fairy folks. It's this very quiet peace has descended. Even my boys are very quiet. What are you doing, my boys? I'm going to have to turn my seat the other way. It's dropping me now, but I can't see you. But this way the people can see you. You're sitting on your swing like a good boy. You used to be terrified of that swing. Yes, now you get it. You're a good little Kermie and a good little boy. Alrighty, here we go, my beautiful ones. But the realm of Nargothrond extended also west of Narog to the river Neming, that reached the sea at Eglarist, and Finrod became the overlord of all the elves of Beleriand between Sirion and the sea, save only in the Falas. Excuse me. Pardon me. There dwelt those of the Sindar who still loved ships, and Círdan the shipbuilder was their lord. But between Círdan and Finrod there was friendship and alliance. And with the aid of the Noldor, the havens of Bruthombar and Eglarist were built anew. Behind their great walls they became fair towns and harbours with quays and piers of stone. Upon the cape west of Eglarist, Finrod raised the tower of Barad Nimrus to watch the western sea, though needlessly as it proved, for at no time ever did Morgoth essay to build ships or to make war by sea. Water all his servants shunned, but to the sea none would willingly go nigh, save in dire need. With the aid of the elves of the havens, some of the folk of Nargothrond built new ships, and they went forth and explored the great Isle of Balar, thinking there to prepare a last refuge if evil came. But it was not their fate that they should ever dwell there. Just going to pause again, show you the map of the realms of the Noldar and the Sindar. Can you see? I don't know if you can see it. Let's come in a bit closer. It all looks very pretty, very mountainous. Of course, Mamati, her preference would be to live by the sea. I still wish I lived by the sea, even though I've been here at Holland Park in the hills for 22 years and, what is it now, 4 months? May, June, July, August, September. Yes, 4 months. Almost 5 months next month, early next month. But there you go. 22 years I've lived in this house and garden. It's a long time, isn't it? It's the longest I've ever stayed in one place. I was harassed and driven from place to place by evil, dirty bastards. So this has been a safe home for me, and it was actually prophesied back when I was being threatened with my little children that I would come to this place. That psychic even described the colour of the roof, said it was a mushroom colour, and that it had 2 frangipani trees, which I'm sitting under as I read to you. She could see everything as if she was watching television. It was amazing. Of course, at the time I didn't quite believe her, but she told me, she said, "You will be safe there." And I was so under vicious attack that I burst into tears and wept in front of her. She got quite a shock. She didn't understand the import of those words. You will be safe there. I hadn't known safety, not really even in early childhood with my pedophile family, and it was beyond awful. So I'm grateful for the 22 years of relative safety I've had here. I haven't always been safe. There were still a few vicious attacks, but nothing of the scope that happened back in those days. It was completely hyenas. Anyway, let us continue with the story. Thus the realm of Finrod was the greatest by far, though he was the youngest of the great lords of the Noldor, Fingolfin, Fingon, and Medros, and Finrod Felagund. But Fingolfin was held overlord of all the Noldor, and Fingon after him, though their own realm was but the northern land of Hithlum. Yet their people were the most hardy and valiant, most feared by the orcs, and most hated by Morgoth. Upon the left hand of Sirion lay East Beleriand, at its widest 100 leagues from Sirion to Gilion and the borders of Osiriand. And first, between Sirion and Mendeb, lay the empty land of Dunbar under the peaks of the Chrysaegron, abode of eagles. Between Mendeb and the upper waters of Escaldun lay the no-land of Nan Dungortheb, and that region was filled with fear, for upon its one side the power of Melian fenced the north march of Doriath, but upon the other side the sheer precipices of Ered Gorgoroth, mountains of terror, fell down from high Dorthonion. Thither, as was earlier told, Ungoliant had fled from the whips of the Balrogs, and there she dwelt a while, filling the ravines with her deadly gloom. And there still, when she had passed away, her foul offspring lurked weaved and wove their evil nets. And the thin waters that spilled from Ered Gorgoroth were defiled and perilous to drink, for the hearts of those that tasted them were filled with shadows of madness and despair. All living things else shunned that land, and the Noldor would pass through Nand Ungortheb only at great need by paths near to the borders of Doriath and furthest from the haunted hills. That way was made long before in the time ere Morgoth returned to Middle-earth, and if one fared upon it, he came eastwards to Escaldune, where still there stood in the days of the siege the stone bridge of Aient Ior. Thence he passed through Dor Dinen, the silent land, and crossing the Arosiach, which signifies the fords of Aros, came to the north marches of Beleriand, where dwelt the sons of Fëanor. Southward lay the guarded woods of Doriath, abode of Thingol, the hidden king, into whose realm none passed save by his will. Its northern and lesser part, the forest of Neldoreth, was bounded east and west by the dark river Escaldune, which bent westward in the midst of the land, and between Aros and Escaldune, yes, my boy, lay the denser and greater woods of Region. Upon the southern bank of Escaldune, where it turned westward towards Sirion, were the caves of Menegroth, and all Doriath lay east of Sirion, save for a narrow region of woodland between the meeting of Taglin and Sirion and the mares of Twilight. You're swinging on your swing, little handsome boy. Are you swinging on your swing? Oh, he's got it moving. He's put his back into it. It's really swinging. Good boy. Oh, you're a clever boy. He says, it's not clever, Mama T. It's natural birdie num-num instincts. I know, but it's still clever. Everything you do is clever. Do you know why? 'Cause I love you. Yes. And what about little Bo? Where is little Bo? Little Bo. Where is little handsome Bo? I love you too, little Bobo. You could swing on your swing. He hasn't worked out about his swing yet. It took Hermie a long time to get used to the new swing too. I put him on the swing when I put him inside the cage, when I bring them outside each day. And he sits on it just long enough to give me evils and then jumps off it. He doesn't like swinging. You're a funny little birdie, aren't you, Bo? He says, I might be a funny birdie, Mama T, but I'm a real bird and I know my own mind. You have to respect that. A man who knows his own mind doesn't play games. Lovely. Well, there you go, my sweet people of Earth. I digress and I lost my spot. Right, here we go. Let's continue. I might have to repeat that because I lost my spot. I got distracted by my clever little birdie voice. By the people of Doriath, this wood was called Nevrim, the West March. Great oak trees grew there, and it also was encompassed within the girdle of Milian, that so some portion of Sirion, when she loved in reverence of Ulmo, should be wholly under the power of Thingol. I found that a little bit stilted, Mr. Tolkien, or Professor Tolkien, but we'll let it pass. Stilted language makes it hard for me to read, but, you know, who am I? I am only the tongue, a mere woman, in the style of the hobbits. I don't have furry feet, thank the gods, though. That would be a bit awkward. The lorikeets are here. In the southwest of Doriath, where Aros flowed into Sirion, lay great pools and marches on either side of the river, which halted there in his course and strayed in many channels. That region was called Ailin Ual, the twilight mares, for they were wrapped in mists, and the enchantment of Doriath lay over them. Mama is no longer in the shade. Might have to move us. Oh well, we'll carry on a little bit longer. Now all the northern part of Beleriand sloped southward to this point, and then for a while was plain, and the flood of Sirion was stayed, but south of Ailin Ual the land fell suddenly and steeply, and all the lower fields of Sirion were divided from the upper fields by this fall, which, to one looking from the south northward, appeared as an endless chain of hills, running from Eglarist beyond Narog in the west to Amon Ereb in the east, within far sight of Gilion. Narog came through these hills in a deep gorge, and flowed over rapids, but had no fall, and on its western bank the land rose into the great wooded highlands of Toren Faroth. On the west side of this gorge, where the short and foaming stream Ringwell tumbled headlong into Narog from the high Faroth, Finred established Nargothrond. But some 25 leagues east of the gorge of Nargothrond, Sirion fell from the north in a mighty fall below the mares, and then he plunged suddenly underground into great tunnels that the weight of his falling waters delved, and he issued again 3 leagues southward with great noise and smoke through rocky arches at the foot of the hills, which were called the Gates of Sirion. Got a craving for chippies. It's the salt, isn't it, that I'm craving? Honestly, constant craving for bloody chips, and I really like those. You can buy these things. What are they called? Anyway, they're dried peas. I really enjoy those too. But all I can do is think about food all the time. It's ridiculous. But I haven't had a lot to eat. I had Weet-Bix and then a little bit of the fruit that I cut up for the birdies, which I don't normally even have that much, so I should be hungry. It's getting on for lunchtime. It's 1:17. just clicked on to 1:18 p.m. So I'm not going to beat myself up for being hungry. Anyway, let us continue with the story. This dividing fall was named Andrang, the long wall from Nargothrond to Ramdal, the wall's end, in East Beleriand. But in the east it became ever less sheer, for the vale of Gilion sloped steadily southward, and Gilion had neither fall nor rapids throughout his course, but was ever swifter than was Sirion. Between Ramdal and Gilion there stood a single hill of great extent and gentle slopes, but seeming mightier than it was, for it stood alone, and that hill was named Amon Ereb. Upon Amon Ereb died Denethor, land of the Nandor that dwelt in Osiriand, who marched to the aid of Thingol against Morgoth in those days when the orcs first came down in force and broke the starlit peace of Beleriand. And upon that hill Maedhros dwelt after the great defeat. But south of the Andrang, between Sirion and Gilion, was a wild land of tangled forest in which no folk went, save here and there a few dark elves wandering. Turin Dunath it was named, the forest between the rivers. Gilion was a great river, and he rose in two sources, and had at first two branches. Little Gilion, that came from the hill of Himring, and Greater Gilion, that came from Mount Ririer. From the meeting of his arms, he flowed south for 40 leagues before he found his tributaries, and before he found the sea, he was twice as long as Sirion, though less wide and full, for more rain fell in Hithlum and Dothonion, whence Sirion drew his waters, than in the east. From Ered Luin flowed the 6 tributaries of Gilion, Askar, that was after named Rathloriel, Thalos, Legolan, Burthor, Julwen, and Adurot. The swift and turbulent streams, falling steeply from the mountains. And between Askar in the north and Aduront in the south, and between Gilion and Ered Luin, lay the far green country of Osiriond, the land of 7 rivers. Now, at a point nearly midway in its course, the stream of Aduront divided and then joined again, and the island that its waters enclosed was named Tol Galen, the Green Isle. There Beren and Luthien dwelt after their return. In Osiriond dwelt the Green Elves in the protection of their rivers, for after Sirion Ulmo loved Gilion above all the waters of the western world. The woodcraft of the elves of Osiriond was such that a stranger might pass through their land from end to end and see none of them. They were clad in green in spring and summer, and the sound of their singing could be heard even across the waters. What's going on, my boy? Even across the waters of Gilion. Wherefore the Noldor named that country Lindon, the land of music, and the mountains beyond they named Ered Lindon, for they first saw them from Osiriand. East of Dorthonion. You answering the lorikeets, my boy? He's singing to you. Charlie's friends are singing to you. I miss my Charlie. East of Dorthonion, the marches of Beleriand were most open to attack, and only hills of no great height guarded the Vale of Gilion from the north. In that region, upon the march of Medros and in the lands behind, dwelt the sons of Fëanor with many people, and their riders passed often over the vast northern plain, Lothlan, the wide and empty, east of Ardgallen, lest Morgoth should attempt any sortie towards East Beleriand. The chief citadel of Medros was upon the hill of Himring, the ever-cold, and that was wide-shouldered, bare of trees, and flat upon its summit, surrounded by many lesser hills. Between Himring and Dorthonion there was a pass, exceeding steep upon the west, and that was the pass of Aglon, and was a gate unto Dariath, and a bitter wind blew ever through it from the north. But Celagorm and Curufin fortified Aglon and held it with great strength, and all the land of Himlad southward between the river Aros that rose in Dorthonion and his tributary Kelon that came from Himring. Between the arms of Gilion was the ward of Maglor, and here in one place the hills failed altogether. There it was that the orcs came into East Beleriand before the third battle. There's not a breath of wind. Well, maybe a tiny, tiny zephyr, just gently moving the heliconians, but that's all. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful, beautiful day, people of Earth. Therefore the Noldor held strength of cavalry in the plains at that place, and the people of Caranthir fortified the mountains to the east of Maglor's Gap. There Mount Rerir and about it many lesser heights stood out from the main range of Ered Lindon westward, and in the angle between Rerir and Ered Lindon there was a lake, shadowed by mountains on all sides save the south. That was Lake Halavorn, deep and dark, and beside it Caranthir had his abode. But all the great land between Gilion and the mountains, and between Rerir and the river Asgar, was called by the Noldor Thargelion, which signifies the land beyond Gilion, or Dor Haranthir, the land of Caranthir, and it was here that the Noldor first met the dwarves. But Thagelion was before called by the grey elves Talath Runen, the East Vale. Thus the sons of Fëanor under Maedhros were the lords of East Beleriand, but their people were in that time mostly in the north of the land, and southward they rode only to hunt in the green woods. But there Amrod and Amras had their abode, and they came seldom northward while the siege lasted, and there also other of the elf lords would ride at times, even from afar, for the land was wild but very fair. Of these Finrod Felagund came most often, for he had great love of wandering, and he came even into Osiriand, and won the friendship of the green elves. But none of the Noldor went ever over Ered Lindon while their realm lasted, and little news and late came into Beleriand of what passed in the regions of the east. And although the next chapter is rather short, I think I'll end here because I want to make myself some lunch, which is really kind of dinner, since I've had that mince out for a couple of days. And I'm going to make a nice, mince with vegetables. I call it spaghetti bolognese, but it's not because I don't eat pork and things like that. It's just really, mince boiled in a wok with lots of vegetables and tomato. I haven't got any tomato paste. I've been obsessing about that. I ran out again. I have to buy some more. I've got a big bottle of tomato kind of special sauce for bolognese, so I'll just chuck that in. And that should be quite delicious. And you can tell I'm hungry, but all I can think about right now is food. It is what it is. Anyway, wherever you are in the space-time continuum, have a beautiful day, people of Earth, and I hope you enjoyed that reading, even though I did my usual weird segues and chatted to my birds and chatted to the wild ones. It is what it is. Living inside my mind can be a bit distractible. Anyway, Goddess bless to those of you who are believers in magic across this immense multiverse, and wherever you are, stay free, stay wild, stay happy, live your best lives with harm to none. So it is done. Bye for now.